So my mom died when I was young, when I was 16. My dad, for much of his life, was a truck driver. I remember very clearly my mom sitting at the table worried, just fretting terribly about how is she going to get that checkbook balance? How's our family going to live within its means? My oldest sisters worked for the same company for over 40 years or so as a secretary, administrative assistant. My oldest brother worked for his whole career almost as a produce clerk in a grocery store, the United Food and Commercial Workers, and for part of that time a union steward. My other brother, Dan, worked for a big chunk of his life at an oil refinery, part of the Atomic and Chemical Workers Union. Now he works for a city as a municipal worker. And my other sister, Rose, works as a one-on-one special ed aide in a public school district, part of a public employees union. The reason I share this with you is because if we're going to grow this party, we need to regain the support of what used to be called the Reagan Democrats, and I now call the Sam's Club Republicans. Just a updating of the reference. And the reason I'm so optimistic and excited about how we can do this is because I live this. And when I went to my brothers and sisters back in the day and even now and say, do you want your taxes raised? They said, no way, not in a highly taxed state like Minnesota. Well, how about schools? Should we just continue to plow money into schools, or should we demand aligning the money for reform and better results and accountability? No, we're with you on that. Well, how about health care? You want the federal government taking over the health care system? Or do you think you should be in charge of that with your family and your doctor making choices that you think are right for you? No, we're with you on that. What about some of the even more provocative issues like guns, Second Amendment issues? Hey, don't take away our guns. We like to hunt fish in Minnesota. And go down the list of maybe the top 10 issues. And they basically agree with me on 7 or 8 out of the top 10 issues. And I'd say, well, why then are you for the other side? Why then are you Democrats? Well, you Republicans, you're not for the working person. You ever heard that? Now, our competitors, the Democrats, they create the illusion that they're giving away free stuff. And so if you're going broke, if you're a family without health insurance, you don't have a job, you can't buy groceries, you're worried about how you're going to get your kids through college, you'll grab onto any floating object in the water. And if you got the elixir salesman that comes by and says, I got the elixir and it's free, that's a very attractive proposition to people who feel like they're drowning. So we're not the party of giving away free stuff. We got a little more explaining to do about how our ideas and values work. But when we do, and we do that effectively, and we do that positively, and we do that as a hopeful, optimistic party, not compromising our principles, then we gain support and we grow this party. And that's what we need to do. So there's much to be done. Give you a few things from the to-do list. Number one, of course, we have to get our hands on spending at the state levels. And if you don't think this is a state issue, look what's going on in California. Look what's going on in New York. That is a preview of coming attractions for many states if we don't get our financial house in order at the state level as well as the federal government. In Minnesota from 1960, the year I was born, yeah, that makes me 49. Soon to be 50. From 1960 until I became governor in the state of Minnesota, the average 2-year increase in the state's budget was 19%. 19%. We now have that down for the first time in a 150-year history of my state. We've cut the budget in real terms. So we can do it in Minnesota, the land of McCarthy, the land of Mondale, the land of Humphrey, the land of Wellstone, the land of U.S. Senator Al Franken. As Frank Sinatra sang about New York, if we can do it there, we can do it anywhere. And now we have Minnesota spending down the lowest level in the modern history of the state, and we got the state out of the top 10 in taxes. Now that wasn't easy. I had to set a record for vetoes in my state. We had to have something called unallotment to the tune of a few $1 billion. We've had big arguments over this. but it needed to get done. And more needs to be done. You know what, at the federal level, we should impound the unspent TARP money and the unspent stimulus money. And we should get rid of earmarks. We should just get rid of earmarks. The notion that people in the dark of night can hook a project on that hasn't had a hearing, hasn't had any public scrutiny is ridiculous. We should propose and pass a constitutional amendment that requires the federal government to balance its budget like 49 states. We should give the President of the United States the line item veto authority so he or she can get the budget under control. We should denationalize the nationalization process that this administration has undertaken and taken over companies. We should sell our equity stake as a government, get out of that business as quickly as possible. We should keep our commitments to the current government employees at the state and federal level, but here's a dirty little secret. We can't afford, nor is it fair anymore, to have a two-tier system where our government employees get a Cadillac level of benefits and pensions, and everybody else, who are their counterparts in the private market, get something different. We got to reform public employee pensions and obligations. We got to make the Bush tax cuts permanent. We got to grow this economy. We got to have a fair and flatter and more simple tax system at the federal level and at the state level. Continue to take away freedom and discourage private enterprise by doing really dumb things like proposing card check, taking away people's right to vote in private in workplace elections. We got to have real health care reform, like I said earlier, focused on consumers. How to do that? If I said to you tonight, on your way home, go to a great Minnesota company, go to Best Buy, go to Target, buy a television set, buy any television that you'd like, but don't look at the price. In fact, just buy any TV that you want, as big as you want, any qualities that you want, any features that you want, and send me and Mary the bill. 1006 Summit, the governor's residence, St. Paul, Minnesota. How many of you would show up back at your house tonight with a 12-inch black and white? You wouldn't even show up with an 18-inch flat screen. Now, that's human nature. You cannot have a system where consumers get to go consume stuff having essentially no knowledge about price, no knowledge about quality, and then have the bill go somewhere else, like an HMO, the government, or an insurance company, and expect that system to work. So what we did in Minnesota, amongst other things, is said, look, to our state employees, you can go anywhere you want. But if you choose to go somewhere that's really expensive with bad results, you're paying more. And if you choose to go somewhere that has really good results, that's more efficient, you'll pay less. Guess what they did? 90% of the state employees, 90, migrated to higher quality, lower cost, more efficient providers. Their health care is as good or better. They're happier than they were before, and the premium increases in that program for 3 out of the last 5 years were 0%, and the other 2 years approaching 0%. So almost 5 years in a row of nearly 0% increase in costs as measured by premiums in that program. That's the kind of health care reform that we need in the country, not a federal government takeover.